Hello everyone, this is Sarvesh. In this video, we'll be solving the Laplace transform of the function f of t equals t. Our given function is f of t equals t. So the given question is to find the Laplace transform of this function. To find the Laplace transform of our function f of t. Okay. So Laplace transform by definition, Laplace transform of any function f of t equals integral limit tending from 0 to infinity e to the power negative s times t times a given function dt. Now instead of starting with a function f of t equals t, let's try to find out the function f of t equals 1. So let's try to find out the Laplace transform of this function. So by definition, Laplace transform of a given function, which is 1, equals integral from 0 to infinity e to the power negative s times t times a function, which is 1 times dt, which would be just the integral 0 to infinity e to the power negative st dt. This would be equal to negative 1 over s e to the power negative st evaluated at 0 and at infinity. Now this would mean negative 1 over s is a constant, so I'll just take that outside. Now this would be e to the power negative st. E to the power negative st is 1 over e to the power s times t evaluated from 0 till infinity. Now this would be equal to negative 1 over s. Now this part would evaluate to e to the power e to the power s times t. T is infinity minus 1 over e to the power s times t, which is 0. Now this would be negative 1 over s. Now e to the power s times infinity would be just infinity. Then 1 over infinity would be 0, which means 0 minus e to the power s times 0 is e to the power 0. E to the power 0 is 1. So negative 1 over 1 is 1, which means a Laplace transform of 1 would be equal to 1 over s. So now we know the Laplace transform of 1 equals 1 over s. Now let's try to find out the Laplace transform of a given function, which is t. A function is t. Now let's make use of the theorem which states that Laplace transform of the derivative of the function f of t equals s times the Laplace transform of antiderivative of the function minus the antiderivative of the function evaluated at 0. Now let's consider a function to be t. Now the antiderivative of a function would be differential of f of t with respect to dt, which would be differential of a function t with respect to dt, which would be equal to 1. So a Laplace transform of our f prime t, which would be 1, is equal to s times the Laplace transform of our function, which is nothing but t, we assumed it to be t, minus the value of the function at 0. So the value of a function evaluated 0 would be 0. So minus 0. So the Laplace transform of 1 equals s times the Laplace transform of t. So we already know the value of Laplace transform of 1, which is 1 over s. Now this would be equal to s times Laplace transform of t. Now this gives us the Laplace transform of our function f of t equals t, which is equal to 1 over s square.